It's time for our keynote address here in London. Now, this man will address one of the big concerns in the industry. How will the next era of digital disruption transform BIM? Now, we have for you across Norway and also across Sweden and here in London and across all over the world now who are watching us digitally, the Vice President of AC Digital Strategy at Autodesk. Please welcome Theo Agelopoulos. Theo.
Thank you.
Sir.
Great to be here. Okay, so thank you, Paul, and thanks everyone for being here. Okay.
Sorry, Theo.
Okay, well, that's one way to make sure no one's sleeping. Thank you. So yes, I'm very excited to be here today. This is actually, I think, my second BIM summit. So hopefully, what I'll do is I'll share with you, and I think we've made a lot of progress as an industry, and I think certainly as a technology company. I always like to say, we don't do BIM. I think our customers do BIM. BIM is a digital delivery process, and we're here to enable it through technology. So let me get started. And hopefully this morning you heard our keynote speaker who talked about storytelling. So I'm going to tell a lot of stories today. So don't buy Autodesk or buy Autodesk software based on what I say, or don't buy Autodesk stock. As a result, I'm going to do my best to be transparent, but at the end of the day, many things change. Okay, so for those, I'm pretty sure everyone knows who Autodesk is, but at the end of the day, we're a big technology company. We've definitely transformed over the years from being a company that started with 2D CAD and evolved into 3D CAD, into BIM, and then into multiple types of industries. And if you look at the various industries, certainly that we service today at Autodesk, you'll see we service the building industry, the transportation industry, the water industry, and the industrial industry. These are the primary industries that we build technology, we go to market. It doesn't mean that our technology isn't used in other industries. Obviously, it's used in many other industries, but I'd say these are really our core focus industries as a company. Okay, so I like to think about trends kind of in these three buckets. As you heard earlier, my job at Autodesk is we are building our long-range plan for the AEC industry. So we're really thinking about what does our business look like over the course of the next 3 years. And we really think of it in terms of these three buckets. The first one is what's really driving demand. And I'm sure every day we wake up and something changes. In the last week, we've seen interesting experiences around tariffs, another huge change. But also we went through COVID. We've seen huge infrastructure bills across the world. So there's a lot of different things that are driving the demand for the goods and services that all of you produce. The second thing I would say is the way we work is always changing, whether it's labor shortages, whether it's the industrialization of construction, and these are all kind of different means and methods of how we do our work. And the final thing is obviously something that's very near and dear to me. Even though I'm a civil engineer, I've spent most of my career on the technology side of engineering and design. Is we've seen big data, we've seen cloud, we've seen now AI. There's all these different things that are going on in our industry, and the question is, how do these things really drive the digital transformation of our industry? So, digital transformation is a cool word, but how do you anchor it in something that's practical and actionable? So the first thing, and I don't know if any of you didn't see Nitesh from Seven Trent's presentation earlier, I would highly encourage you to watch it online later, because as an owner, he talks about the whole value chain. He talked about the whole ecosystem. And I think certainly at Autodesk, we're now thinking far beyond just an architect or an engineer or a contractor. We're thinking about how does information flow all the way through the complete asset life cycle. Okay, so I think when you start thinking about the life cycle, that's when you can really make a huge difference in driving some of the outcomes that we need as an industry. I always show this slide because, every 4 or 5 years, there's something else that happens. And 5 years ago, when digital twins started, to come online, depending on what marketing brochure you watched or read, you would hear people say, "Oh, digital twin is the new BIM." And what I would say, certainly our position is building information modeling has certainly changed over the last 20 years. 20 years ago, or 15 to 18 years ago, the term building really was a noun. I think today, in terms of how we think about it, it's a verb. It's about building an information management delivery process, and technology is simply an enabler of that. And if you implement BIM, the reality is you should really derive a digital twin. So a digital twin really should be an outcome of a digital delivery process. I mean, that's the connectivity we need as an industry. And so I'm here to tell you that, continuing to invest in BIM is critically important. What it means today versus what it meant, 15 to 20 years ago is different, but it's still a critical part of the way we deliver capital assets through the complete asset lifecycle. The other thing, I wanted to share, is when we think about the digital delivery process, we also think about this logical convergence between, geospatial and CAD and BIM. You can't do one without the other. And if you look at the slide, you'll see that really GIS really informs BIM, and building information modeling then has to feed asset management and operations. So we've been working certainly very hard, to bring or bridge that gap, and certainly our partnership with Esri is a critical part of our business strategy of how we drive that convergence in the industry. And over the last, I would say, 5 to 6 years of working very closely with Esri, what we've seen kind of evolve is this logical transition, and I'll talk a little bit about this in my presentation later. We started with this kind of desktop to desktop frictionless, connectivity. How do you get GIS data better into a lot of our content creation tools? And then it was how do you connect, a lot of our data management platforms together? And now we're on this next part of the journey, which is, our customers are deploying platforms, and how do we create this federated platform experience for our customers that also reduces a lot of the friction in how they do their work, okay? So this is a very important part, and as I mentioned earlier, convergence of industries is happening at the same time that we're seeing the evolution of BIM. So when you think about a typical digital project, the reality is you've got many stakeholders, but in simple terms, you've got the owner who's driving towards a certain outcome they want, and then you've got generally designers and engineers and architects that are designing for that particular outcome, and then you've got a contractor that basically builds it and eventually hands it over back to the owner, okay? So what's critically important, and at the center of all this, is this idea of a common data environment. And a common data environment is really the way that we're going to create this connectivity between these different parties and the key decisions they need to make. And if you look at ISO 19650, it's built on this kind of principle. So within each of those boxes, there's obviously generally many common data environments. It's not just one. As much as I would love it to be an Autodesk common data environment, it's not, which means that as a technology provider, we have to coexist, be open, interoperable to ensure that our customers and the industry can continue to evolve. And that's a very important part of our strategy, I would say, is to make sure that that happens. So at the core of a common data environment, obviously, is all the different parties and stakeholders, and the technologies that we build, obviously, are there to enable that to happen. So at the end of the day, if we build this highly interoperable and connected experience, this is the kind of experience we want to provide to project managers and non-technical stakeholders. An experience where all the data has been aggregated, organized, and viewed to solve different jobs to be done, okay? You shouldn't have to be a Revit user or a Civil 3D user from Autodesk in order to use or consume and use that data in a productive way. So the future the experience of the future is this. And what I'm showing you today is everything our customers are certainly doing today, and they're using many other technologies, not just Autodesk, but the ability to bring it all together in a coordinated way is critically important. And breaking down those barriers, I think, is one of the key things that we're doing, and certainly we're building interoperability agreements with companies like Trimble, obviously with Esri, with Bentley, with Hexagon, because I think we can't actually move the industry forward if we don't break down some of these artificial silos. Okay, so we've been on this journey that I mentioned. Autodesk obviously has been very at the beginning of that journey, and I'm here today on the next part of this journey, but you can see that our industry has evolved from being a CAD, 3D CAD, BIM, this kind of cloud-connected BIM experience. And the question is, what's next? What does BIM of the future look like? We always like to think about it in terms of, if you think about the total operating cost of an asset, 85–90% of it is generally in operations and maintenance. But the decisions that we make at the front end of that process will have a huge influence on the outcomes. So, the industry needs to start thinking about what are the outcomes that we want that will drive productivity and efficiency in the future. And if we make those decisions early on and we optimize for those decisions on, we end up with a better outcome for the owner, okay? And that's also going to require new ways of working. And AI today, and what I would say to you is the next probably 2 to 3 years is going to be the most disruptive, probably the most disruptive phase of the AEC industry. It's probably going to be more disruptive than what we've seen BIM do over the last 20 years. And the reason I say that is because it's forcing us to completely change the way we create data, manage data, use data, okay? And AI and the jobs that different people do, whether you're an architect, engineer, or a contractor, will also change. At the same time, we have a challenging labor market. It's really difficult to find talent. It's really difficult to retain talent, and it's really difficult to train talent, okay? So we think technology has a role to play to help us optimize the whole value chain, and AI is going to be at the core of that. So as you think about, certainly we as a technology provider, and I don't think it's just Autodesk, I think all of my peer companies, are kind of on the same journey at some level, is we're evolving from, this idea of a 2D CAD desktop application, into this kind of cloud-first data management environment. And there's this next phase that we're certainly at Autodesk developing this new concept of a platform approach. And our platform approach the branding of that platform approach is going to be called Forma. So if you're coming to Autodesk University, later this year, and even last year, you would have heard this concept of Forma, and I'm going to explain what that is, and I'm going to explain why we're doing it. But that's the technology evolution, certainly, that we've been on. Why are we doing it? It's because, our customers need a better way to connect data, people, and processes together, okay? The historical way we create data has been very file-based, and that provides a lot of constraints in how you actually achieve what I just said. So that means that we, certainly at Autodesk, are on this journey to transition from being a product company to a platform company, okay? The way we deliver our technology, and if you think about the products that many of you use today, we've created these monolithic products, and I constantly hear from our customers, but I only use 10, 20% of your products. It's so difficult. There's a huge cost to train, versus if I take my iPhone out, how many in the room ever got trained on how to use an iPhone? Not one hand, okay? And why do you think that is? The reason is because what Apple did, as an example, is they created a platform which is called iOS, and on top of that platform, they created all these discrete apps. Some of those apps they deliver as part of their phone, but they've got this huge ecosystem of third parties that built apps on top of their iPhone, and you as a user essentially assemble those apps in a way that's highly curated to the work that you do. And it's the reason why many professional users started adopting those kinds of applications in the workplace well before their corporate entities started to push them through. So a platform company, that's what that looks like. In the future, we're not going to deliver Revit or Civil 3D the way we do today. We're still going to have products, those products today to, for our customers to continue to create data. But when we try and solve other jobs, we're going to start developing these unique apps that are highly curated, and we're going to allow our customers to assemble those apps the way they need, which will drive lower uptake in training, a more curated, a highly tailored experience, and will drive a higher rate of digital adoption. So that's the vision, certainly, that we have, and that's central, to do that. Now, I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest constraints in the industry is the fact that a lot of the data we create is still very file-based, and we've been doing that for 40 years. And even the way we deliver information to the client is very digital file-based, okay? So, all we've really done is taken paper and, shapes on a piece of paper. Instead of delivering it on paper, we're delivering it on digital paper, okay? So the vision of what BIM was, and many of you probably same age as me, if you remember back 20 years ago, we used to show this sawtooth, between planning and how you kind of recreate a lot of data. Okay, that sawtooth still exists today, I would argue. Okay, it's better. Is it as better as what we had envisioned? I think the answer is no. Okay, so we've reached this point where we need to disrupt ourselves in the way we create data, manage data, and deliver data in the future. And I think at the core of that is this idea that we move to kind of a data-first digital delivery approach. And in order to do that, in order to use AI, we have to do that. So today, you deliver a bunch of files, and they're great. But what we really need to do is deconstruct these files into discrete data. So when you take a file, what we're going to do, certainly within our platform experience, is we're going to take all that data out of those files and we're going to start managing it as discrete, granular, structured data. Okay? So at the end of the day, as long as you're using certainly Autodesk technology, I don't want to speak for my peer companies, but at Autodesk, what we're doing is if you put your data inside of an Autodesk Docs environment, which is our current file-based CDE, what we're actually doing is behind the scenes is building a very rich, granular data environment. So that's really the foundation for us to then be able to use AI and drive some of these better outcomes. So today, what do? Continue to use Docs as your CDE. If you're an Autodesk customer, you continue to use your core offering and authoring solutions to create data, but now what we're going to do is unlock that data, okay? So that data now exists in this structured environment, and we're going to connect all of our products to that centralized data environment, okay? So what we've done is taken down one of the single biggest barriers that inhibits the ability to interoperate and create value. And it means that for the next several years, you're still going to continue to use your tools, like I said, to create data, populate data, and then to use that data to do other things. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what unlocking data means. So unlocking data means that Autodesk is going to be used, other Autodesk applications will be able to use that granular data. You'll be able to use that granular data to do different things, and even our competitors will be able to tap into our data differently than they do today. So we're truly trying to build an open data ecosystem, because what we realize is that we have to be open and interoperable if we want to coexist in our customers' data environments. So we are very much investing in being open and interoperable. And what that's now going to allow is a different experience between human and machine. And this is what AI is going to drive, and why I think the next 3 to 5 years is going to be, or I would argue 2 to 3 years is going to be very different than the last 20 years. So if you think about just in the last 5 years, you can see there's been a shift of how much people are using humans and machines to do their jobs, okay? And the question I always get is AI going to replace architects and engineers? And the reality is what I think is going to happen is architects and engineers and contractors that use AI will replace those that don't, okay? And what they do will be spending their time on high-value tasks, especially in a market where we're having challenges keeping and bringing in new talent. This is going to help bridge some of that gap, okay? And the way we think, what we think that will do is actually drive more capacity, okay? You're still going to need architects and engineers. We want to shift them from doing low-value tasks. We want to put them on high-value tasks, which drive better outcomes, more profitability, and so forth. And that's kind of what we see the value of AI. And when we think about AI, we think about it in terms of these three key stages. Right now, you're seeing so much happening around text-based and large language models. Whether you're using ChatGPT or Copilot, that has transformed so quickly because there's thousands of companies investing in this, okay? And Autodesk certainly is not going to go, we want to leverage that for what we want to do, but we're not going to go and just spend all our time there. What we really want to spend our time on is industry-specific and spatial and physical reasoning. That's kind of the sweet spot. And Autodesk as a company, we've spent probably a decade investing in doing research in what I would call 3D-centric AI. And we've actually, I think we're the #1 published company, a technology company in white papers and different types of patents and so forth. And so we've seen this coming for a long time. But on top of that, what we expect to happen is this idea of company reasoning. So our customers are going to want to use AI in order to mine, or create agents to do certain things for their company. So we're building a platform. We're going to build this foundation, this data foundation. Our customers are going to be able to put their data into our platform, and then they're going to be able to build different experiences using AI for their company and their specific business needs. So that's kind of the model that we're certainly following at Autodesk. So when you think about Autodesk AI, it's not really a product. It's going to be everywhere, whether it's the products you use today. So if you're using AutoCAD as an example, and you're, just like when you're in Outlook and you type an email and it predicts what you're going to do, Okay, think of, the computer's going to tell you what the next keystroke should be. Some of this is already in our products, like AutoCAD and Revit and so forth, okay? But we think about AI in terms of these three buckets. One is it's going to automate a lot of what I would say tedious, and repeatable tasks. It's going to augment, so think of having and I hate to use the word co-pilot, but think of having a co-engineer or a co-architect. It's going to help you do your job better and drive better outcomes. And then finally, it's going to give us the ability to better analyze complex data and drive better outcomes as well, okay? So this is just an example. This is, we have a product called Forma, which is our first product that's part of the Forma Industry Cloud. And this was the acquisition we made from Spacemaker, several years ago. But it's a good example where we're doing machine learning and creating surrogate models to optimize around different types of analyses. So think about having the ability to do multiple types of analyses to create an optimized massing model that then drives a better outcome, for the owner. And it's still going to feed into our current more traditional detailed design and documentation workflows, but we're going to do more and more of this, in order to drive a better outcome. This is another example of doing geometric design inside of a canvas. So this canvas experience is a much simpler experience that anyone could potentially adopt. And what you'll see in here is a good example where it's not just going to be Autodesk, AI agents. So this is a third party that has actually embedded, their technology within our canvas. So imagine now a lot of our partners, like Symetri, will be able to create these agents or these experiences within the Autodesk ecosystem that can then be leveraged more broadly. Or if you're a customer and you've developed some kind of very unique IP that helps you compete, you can actually just build it inside the Autodesk platform. Okay, so this is very much like the iPhone experience that I talked about. Okay, so you're not going to have to go build all these AI data platforms and trust platforms and security. You just simply build your IP, in a way that can be embedded within our canvas. And this is, another example of another third party that does, they're doing basically a rendering of a building. But I'm just showing you, we're trying to completely open up not just the data, but the types of technologies that can be embedded inside of our platform, okay? So the reason I'm showing you this is now all of a sudden, if all of your data is in a structured data model sitting in the cloud, you can use ChatGPT to interact with that data very differently than you do today, like running a report or printing something out and reviewing it in a group. So, you can simply, in this example here, you see they're just running different queries, and the viewer is just simply showing the outcome of that query. The data itself is sitting in our AEC data model that's sitting inside of our Docs environment, okay? So what did you have to do to get to this experience? The answer is nothing. We're doing it for you, okay? And whether you connect this data to other types of data, and the reason we're creating these interoperability agreements, as I mentioned earlier, is to be able, we don't think the data will ever be in one place. We think what a enterprise data environment looks like is the data is in many places, but it can be connected seamlessly together to drive different types of outcomes. That's the vision, certainly, that we have, and everything that I've showed you so far is already available. Actually, the AEC data model is already in our second beta. You can go online and you can already play with it. So, we're striving to this whole concept that the next phase of BIM is going to be outcome-based BIM. The next phase of BIM is going to be based on more granular data that's better connected, and it's going to use AI to make better decision-making. That's where we see the real value of what we're doing today, certainly at Autodesk. And again, this is just for the sake of time. I'm not going to show you this. This is available online, but it's just an example of how you start thinking about front-end design and planning, okay? And you're going to make a lot of these optimized decisions way earlier than you do today in a more seamless and integrated fashion. Okay, so I'm going to take a couple of minutes and explain what are we doing, certainly at Autodesk, to make this vision a reality. So today, what we have is our products that many of you are all using. We've already connected it to Docs. We're in the process of connecting it to the AEC data model. Our Revit data is already connected to the AEC data model. Today we have a Forma app. If I just click. Oh, we jumped ahead. Okay, so let me go back. So what we have today is we have this idea of a platform. We've connected our apps. On top of that, our platform, we're building these different experiences, or that you seek these capability experiences. So in the future, the analyses and the experiences that we do are not going to be embedded in the products. They're going to be sitting on top of the platform. So whether we do structural analysis, some kind of MEP, duct sizing, it's just going to be a cloud service that runs on top of our platform. If you have developed the world's best finite element analysis, you can simply build it and put it on our platform and scale it across your company, and eventually we're even building a marketplace that you could sell it. Okay, so that's kind of the model that we're working towards. So we're going to build this very rich ecosystem. If you think about the past ecosystem, certainly from Autodesk, we had a strong ecosystem of people building stuff on top of AutoCAD. We've had a strong ecosystem of people building stuff on top of Revit, and the next evolution of that ecosystem is people building, apps on top of our platform. And again, these could be Autodesk apps, they could be third-party, integrator apps, they could even be potentially competitive apps. Okay? And this whole thing is essentially going to be AI-powered. So now that we've got this data, this platform in place, you're going to start seeing AI agents kind of surfacing through this experience to do a lot of the things that I talked around about outcome-based BIM. So that's what we believe the future looks like. We're all on this journey, I would say, together, and whether you realize you're on the bus or not, you're actually on it. And so I'm super excited over the next 3 years that we're going to see complete disruption of our industry one way or another, and it's either we disrupt ourselves or we're going to be disrupted. Thank you.
Thank you, Theo.
Thank you.
I think we learned that you're driving the bus, though, aren't you? You're driving the bus at the moment.
I say we're co-driving the bus. So.
Okay, listen, for those people and those in Oslo and also in Stockholm as well, we're going to be going over there in just a second. What, if there's one, I know it's so much because there's so much to take in, what would you want someone to take away with it?
I think the single biggest barrier if I reflect on my own experience of the last 30 years, the single biggest thing is not really the technology that's going to hold us back, it's really change management.
Sure.
When I look at companies that have been really progressive adopters of digital technologies, because what they did was they committed to change, right? And they disrupted themselves to make that change. So what I would say to people in the room and people online is embrace change. It's going to be disruptive. We see disruption every day, but it's either you have to lead, otherwise you're going to be chasing, is kind of my view about it.
Fair. I know we can say that about everything. We say it in life in general, can't we? You have to change, go with the times. If you're happy with this, we're going to go over to Oslo, we're going to go to Stockholm and see other people's reflections. So we're not going to put you under the cosh here, but we'll see what everybody has to say. Let's go over to Oslo firstly, and Ellen is waiting for us, and there we are. And actually we're Stockholm there. There she is. Always makes a good entrance. So Ellen, who do you have with you? And any comments there on Theo's keynote speech?
Well, thank you very much, Paul. We're so broad-shouldered here in Oslo that we're kind of struggling to fit into the box. We're doing well there. So first, let me introduce Kristine Slotina. You are Senior Constructing Architect in Nordic Office of Architecture. And we have Marius Jablonskis, sorry. Okay. Got it right now, yes. Right. Digital transformation leader in Norconsult. So, Kristine, will start with you. What are your reflections around what you just heard?
I think it's really interesting to hear how Autodesk is going to develop or developing already. And what I talked about earlier, I think it's also more important to be aware of what environments are we doing, what design. So I think that's binds in well with what I discussed earlier. So looking forward.
Marius, what are your thoughts?
It resonates quite well. I think back to Theo's comments, we see more and more customers that are asking not files as deliveries. They want really to integrate data into their systems as a final deliverable. And we're on the right path. And in the same moment, again, resonating back to that, we need to really adopt change. And agility of the company will be quite valuable in the years to come.
So we're back to the courage and the flexibility, right? Yes. John, over to you.
Thank you. Joined by Salla, Eckhardt, the CEO of SARA, and Jens Kollserud of Symetri. Salla, if we start with you, what are your thoughts on what you've heard so far?
Well, thank you, Theo, for an exceptional keynote speech. I think you captured very elegantly the digital transformation today is not only about technical and technology transformation, it is about generational transformation, and the way that you captured how for the future we are already building readiness for renovation construction with what we are building here. Renovation construction is going to double or even triple in the next 10 years. So overall, with the tools that we are seeing today are already building up resilience and discussion about what is the cost, value, and worth of the built environment that we are now designing and building digitally first.
Jens, any comments?
I'd like to build on that. I think it was a very good speech. Thank you, Theo. And I think to build upon this outcome-based BIM expression that you used, I think connected data is something we all work on. We might use a different language to explain it. And the reason we do that is to drive automation and insight. But are we also thinking about value-based pricing and business models? Or are we not? Because I think we are typically quite good at testing technology, like AI, but are we as good testing the pricing and the business model of it?
Now, I've had the opportunity to sort of sneak peek into the roundtable discussions that we're analyzing, and you're onto something. Let's just leave it at that cliffhanger. Paul, I can see you've been joined by another guest other than Theo. Would you do us the honors of continuing this fireside, please?
I will. I could leave it like another cliffhanger if it's a cliffhanger you want, but we've got Amy Beckenham with us from Ridge & Partners. Amy, don't leave us hanging on the cliff. What would you like to say? It's harder for you because where they are is further away and they're in Scandinavia, whereas you're standing right next to Theo. So what did you think of the speech?
If anything, it makes it more human for
me, course.
to be honest.
Well, this is amazing though, isn't it?
But yeah, what I think is really cool about the platform is you've kind of opened it up, right? So that kind of piece about reasoning is like similar to my presentation that I did earlier, right? A lot of different businesses and different disciplines will be interacting with the software, so allowing it to be open and developable by anybody means that then, you know, even directions that Autodesk might not have thought it will go in, which is exciting to be a part of the industry at this moment, I think.
Yeah,
Theo, I mean, it seems you have fans everywhere, so what would you like to say about what everybody said about you?
No, I agree with everything, and actually on the business, just a couple of comments.
Sure.
And I didn't mention it, but yes, I think one of the other barriers is we have to change the way we compensate the, value creation, right? And in the earlier presentation with Seven Trent, they talked a lot about the value to the owner.
They did.
And so I'm not part of your roundtable, so I don't know what's come up, but I do think we have to also, the industry needs to think about different digital delivery models from a business perspective. Otherwise it's gonna it's not going to allow the innovation to happen the way it needs to happen, right? So yes, I think that's an important one. The other thing, that I would say is, and I probably didn't say it in my speech, but at the end of the day, a lot of what we're doing is about driving more sustainable outcomes,
sure,
right? And to me, sustainability is not this afterthought. It should just happen as part of the way we deliver capital assets, right? And I think that's been one of the challenges where, we've been challenged to kind of price the value of sustainability, and the keynote speech this morning was a very creative way to do storytelling. And I think the other comment I would make, we all need to become better storytellers, in the things that we're doing. And I think that'll also help us progress some of these, the movement of the industry, a better, built environment. There's a human factor. I totally agree with you that we need to be conscious of. And the final thing I would say is I think, we're just a technology company, right? Everyone in the room here are the people that are actually doing the work and changing the built environment. And it also is going to force us as an industry, whether we're competitors or not, to work together if we want to enable that to happen. So I think that's the other thing, is that in my opinion, what's changed over the last several years is, Autodesk doesn't just think that it's all about Autodesk, it's about how do we all work together, around a common goal. So I think that's the shift that I feel like I'm seeing personally.
Well, there's something I would like to ask you, and that's as you mentioned Andre as well, or Andre in the first keynote that we had, which was storytelling, incredibly powerful. Linking technology and BIM, supporting preservations of buildings, and I think you probably know where I'm going to go with this, is 6 years ago, almost to the day, that fire at Notre Dame, and how you've been involved and how technology is almost joined together with something which is so old.
Yeah. I mean, our involvement, okay, there's multiple reasons for our involvement. My boss is French, number one. So,
Okay, well, there's one. Okay, well, that's not the one I was expecting.
That aside, but, and I hate to say this, but we're seeing something similar right now with LA fires. I live in Colorado, but, we've also reached in to try and help. I think when you have a disaster like that, it breaks down a lot of natural barriers to allow innovation. And in the case of Notre Dame, it was very much a technology-first approach, and I think the government realized that they could solve this problem better than they could have otherwise if they'd gone to more traditional approaches. And so they completely changed the way they deliver that project. And I think to Salla's point about renovation, we definitely see that happening in general, where in the US, I know there's the latest, or one of the latest AIA stats, is that there's more renovation projects than there are new builds, right? And a lot of that is also driven around sustainability and other things. So we're starting to see and what was unique about Notre Dame is that a lot of it did involve scanning the built environment, modeling the built environment, optimizing around a lot of other criteria to deliver a better outcome. So I think that model is where we need to take that idea and take it everywhere. And it did involve an alternative business model of how they actually procured, hired, suppliers and so forth. So I think we learned a lot through that experience.
Which is a real labour of love, though, because I can imagine being involved in a project something like that is something very special.
It is, and I think, look, here's the reality. None of us in this room became architects or engineers because we thought we were going to get rich, right? We thought we were going to change or make a difference in the world. That's why you become an architect or an engineer, quite frankly. So those types of projects, I think, are very personal. But I think we need to take that passion for everything we do, because it's not just about doing Notre Dame. It's about how do we give everyone clean water? How do we provide a better community? How do we eliminate a lot of the things that are hurting us today, pollution and the list goes on. And we talked earlier this morning around the acidity in the ocean. And these are all, in my opinion, things that we all want to solve together.
Well, it's been an enlightening speech. We've really enjoyed it, so thank you so much. Theo, we appreciate it. Amy as well, thank you so much for coming up to see us.
No problem.
We appreciate that. Can we have a round of applause, please, for Theo? We do have something for you. I'll have to step away for a sec. So, right here, yes, please. So, firstly, we should give you the book, because we've already spoken about the book, and I'm not sure, there's your caricature, and I'm not sure how much that is, but it is. It's like a little Theo there.
Okay,
so,
thank you, yes.
Theo, thank you very much indeed. It's really good to see you.
Thank you so
and a
much.
great speech. Thank you very much. Theo Agelopoulos, everybody. Thank you very much.